to championship weekend we go. Welcome to the Colorado Prep Show presented by UPSWING. Trying to do everything all in one there, Dougie. I'm Dan Mohrmann, the editor-in-chief of Colorado Preps. With me is Doug Ottewill, the editor-in-chief of Mile High Sports Magazine. Just the two of us today. No Jermaine Stafford. The conflict coming up that we are just going to have to remedy at this point, maybe moving forward. But Jermaine is well into the track and field season. We'll miss him for today, but we're hoping that our problem is resolved and that we can get things squared away for next week. And for those who are wondering, Doug and I are matching today. We've got some Peach City gear on, despite the fact that Palisade does not come away with a win as the number 1 seed in the Denver Coliseum. We'll get more on that in a minute, but big thanks to Aaron Howard who supplied me, Doug, and Danny Bailey with some Peach City gear. It was the best alternate uniform I think we saw all season, and they got to wear them at the Coliseum, which is really all you can ask for.
They had gear everywhere. I mean, you got to give them credit because they not only traveled, but like I saw so many of these shirts or sweatshirts or whatever version people had. I mean, it was pretty impressive. It was kind of like, Peach City took over there for a little bit.
Yeah, and big props to Palisade on a great season. Like I said, we'll talk more about that later. But Dougie, as we start every show, we go into what's on our upswing, and it's really nice and easy this week because on the upswing is state championships. We will crown 12 basketball champions on Saturday, all up and down. I guess we would call it the Front Range, at the venues amongst the Front Range. We're going to get more into venues a little bit later too, but state basketball for me is a top 3 weekend of the year. It's when I look at everything that we accomplished and that we did this last weekend just for the grade 8 round at the Coliseum on coloradopreps.com and over right here on the YouTube channel and everything. I'm really proud of the work we do, and I can't wait for Championship Saturday to continue to tell stories about kids winning state titles, and that's what it's all about for us. So,
man, it's by far my favorite weekend of the year on the Preps calendar. With all due respect to all the other sports, this is always where my heart is state basketball. Mm-hmm. And we got to see some phenomenal games in the grade 8 this past weekend. And I know we're going to see even more this week coming up here with 4A grade 8, coming up on Wednesday, but then you get into semifinals and finals. I mean, it's the best time of year. I'm going to narrow it down a little bit though, for my upswing. I'm going to go with the DPS on both the boys and girls side. The DPS was very well represented. On the girls side, you have half of the remaining field as DPS schools, with East and Northfield both playing in their respective semifinal games. On the boys side, Rangeview, who wasn't always a member of the DPS but is now, they're on the boys side, and GW narrowly missed it. I know we're going to talk about that game a little bit too, but by and large, the DPS was very well represented in state basketball this year, and it kind of took me back to my days in the late 80s, early 90s of high school basketball when there was always 3 or 4 DPS teams in the grade 8 every year. Manual, George Washington, East, Montbello, just some great programs. So it's nice to see that these programs are back at it and really competing on a statewide level. So my upswing is the DPS.
The sirens you hear in the background might be the fact police real quick, Doug. The one thing I'm going to clarify you on is Rangeview plays in the city league with all the DPS teams, but they're very much a part of Aurora Public Schools. So if we
look at like their state track meet, they compete in the DPS.
The city league, the DPS.
In their regional track meets, they compete against all the DPS schools.
Yes, they compete against those schools. Those are the schools they should be competing against. But I think the actual district that the school is in is Aurora Public Schools.
We're gonna have to put a pin in this one because I think
we're splitting hairs. Mm-hmm. But I understand what you're saying, and yes, like the old what you're thinking of as the DPL. The old Denver Prep League. That's 100%. Absolutely great to see them represented. Northfield girls, we'll talk about them a little bit. You mentioned the George Washington boys. That's going to be the thing we get into right off the top. But before we go anywhere, Our show, as always, is brought to you by the gang at Upswing, 7460 South University Boulevard in Centennial. Dougie, it is championship week, and that means that kids who are getting elite level training and motivation are doing what they need to do to put themselves in positions to win state championships. With experienced coaches and a safe, high-performance environment, Upswing helps young athletes discover their true potential. Once that potential has been reached and you've got to go ahead to your next competition, you walk right over to that recovery area. It helps young athletes prevent injuries, bounce back faster, and keep progressing towards their dreams. And that's massive this time of year because, as we said, you've got 4A, grade 8, Final Four and 6A and 5A, championship games all on Saturday. And, of course, the same is true up and down the board for 1A, 2A, 3A as well. And for those who think that this sounds expensive, that, outside training of what you can get at the school might just be out of reach, Upswing does its best to remove those cost barriers. When a young athlete earns an Upswing scholarship, it can be the first step towards breaking personal records and reaching new levels of performance. Normally, we bring in our guy, Jermaine Stafford, but as we mentioned, he is the head coach of the Lutheran track and field team. He's got practice to prep for and everything to get going. So no Jermaine today. We're troubleshooting this problem. We were hoping to have a resolution so that he is once again sitting back there. I know he would be ready to gush today, Doug, because both those Lutheran squads, both the boys and the girls, looked so good on Saturday as they advanced to the Final Four. And that's more of what we're going to talk about later. But we have to kick off the entire conversation with where the conversation pretty much hung all week, whether it was on social media, whether it was, on the floor of the Denver Coliseum with administrators, officials, evaluators. The ending of Ralston Valley and George Washington, the best game of the day on Thursday or on Friday, and they saved it for last. The rest of the day, in terms of especially the 6A boys, was a little bit of a meh day, but Ralston Valley, George Washington turned out to be a classic. Ralston Valley wins 54-53, but there are some upset people over the final play of the game, a game in which Zeke Andrews, a guy that we know very, very well, takes an inbound pass on the block and gets the basket for the game winner right there at the buzzer. Congrats to Ralston Valley for moving on. The issue is that a lot of people think, a lot of people in the stands, a lot of people on social media thought it was a charge, that an offensive foul should have been called, and that the result of that game is a little tainted. So I've got my thoughts.
Half of them didn't.
Well, not George might have had the bigger crowd, so I would say maybe more than 50% of the people thought that was the case. But I've got my thoughts. I was chatting with the officials, evaluators first thing the next morning. I'm friends with a lot of officials around the state, and I've gotten their thoughts. I've gotten thoughts from basketball coaches throughout the state. But Doug, you'd packed up to go watch the Nuggets, which you told me Saturday morning you thought was a mistake after that performance. But
I don't think it absolutely wasn't.
But you saw that video. We've got another angle that we're going to show here in a little bit. We're going to slow down everything. But when you see that play in real time, what was your first thought about how that played out?
It's a bang play for sure, and I can see, I can certainly see why someone would want to charge. I mean, it looks pretty violent as far as the defensive, player kind of getting knocked back. But I would go with this. And you mentioned you talked to a lot of officials and official evaluators the next day, but also some coaches and players. I would, in this instance, I would generally kind of go with, what does a coach think? Because an official, in my mind, and this goes, this is what drives me nuts about the NBA. If you challenge a call in the NBA, you're asking the exact same guy who just made the call to tell you he was wrong. So I think talking to an official, while even if they didn't participate in that particular game, they're generally going to defend the official. I think it's just human nature. But I think if you talk to a coach or a player, or if you're a former player like myself, you watch that play and you think, there's no way you want a game decided on a questionable block charge. And I really think that, block charges by their very nature, it's a 50-50 call. at every level. It's such a finite thing unless someone is literally camped out and growing roots, as the coaches used to always say. I think one of the reasons that you look at that play and it kind of looks like Andrews kind of gets his arms up, but he's also going at the basket. So I don't know if you can count that as part of a illegal play. But in my mind, as a former player, and I know a lot of coaches will tell you this, nobody wants a game decided on a whistle. I think if the play is extremely egregious and obvious, sure, you have to call it. But in my mind, that's just such a bang play. I don't think the defensive player beats him to the spot. I also think, hey, if you're beat on that play, your best bet is to act like you're taking a charge. I'm not saying the kid was acting at all, but Andrews clearly has a good angle at the basket. The defensive player wasn't going to stop it. So, I kind of credit both players, Zeke for playing through the play, and the defender for doing what he thought was probably right, trying to draw a charge. I would have been upset with either a block or a charge if you take the score out of it. I think that's one of those ones where you, as an official, unless something's so obvious in the last seconds of a game, you're not the guy that decides it. You let the players decide it.
So what's really interesting, and it was Ralston Valley's possession before that, there was an offensive foul. They were, I want to say they were down one still, or it might have been to give the ball back and where GW scored to take a 1-point lead. But there was a very clear, definitive offensive foul that was called and gave possession back to the Patriots, where you're really getting into the nitty-gritty of the rule. And I tried asking one of the officials, what we see as basketball, whether you're media, you're a fan, you're just a casual observer of the game, what you see does not always match how you apply the rule, right? And that's it. It's getting into a very, I don't want to say a gray area, but a lot of people would think it would be ticky-tack, especially in this situation. But
I would say of all the calls in basketball, block charge is the most subjective call that there is.
Yes. Yeah. But that's very, very valid. So the two elements that I was told, and this is one was were the officials evaluators in the building. And I really enjoy talking to these guys, and I've gotten very friendly with them over recent years, because I always want to know when something is called and then those guys are telling me it's right. I always want to know, why is this right? Because from what I see and from what I understand when watching basketball, it doesn't feel like a call should go XYZ way. And they'll explain the rule to me. They'll explain how the officials apply it, what are the elements they're looking for. So it's really a fun conversation. I think if I had a little more, time on my hands over during the weekend, I actually could have sat down with one of the officials who would have been willing to jump on camera with us and chat about the call in and of itself. So, but if you look at the slow motion version, like from the front angle, you can see the official standing right in front of the camera. What you're going to see is that the defender is not in what they call legal guarding position. He's not square with the ball handler, and his left arm right there is where the first contact is initiated. It's very subtle, but he sticks it out. So the defender makes first contact. So when you see the rear angle, and I just want to make sure that we're trying to give all perspectives we can, but when you see Zeke's elbow go up, the defender actually initiated the contact. And if you have a guy who's not in legal guarding position and who has initiated the contact as the defender, you are not going to get that charge call. There's not an official on the planet who is going to put his whistle on that and reward the defense when those two elements are not met. And when I saw it live, and it's a very easy thing in our situation to sit here on a Monday morning, 3 days after this all happened, look at a video in slow motion and offer our thoughts on it in real time, standing right there. I was the one who shot that video. I didn't think it was a charge. I thought it was clean.
I think the wide angle, the back angle, if you will, where you see the offensive player's arm go up, I think that's probably what has most people fired up. But as you point out, the defender is not square with the offensive player. He's not in between the basket and the offensive player,
which is what they would define as legal guarding position.
Correct. And I think that the the follow through isn't what supposedly knocked the defensive player down anyway. I think I go back to this stance. Nobody wants a game decided on a call. And I think that while that's not a rule, I think it's an unwritten rule. And I think everybody, including players and coaches from either team, would probably agree in a vacuum. If you said, hey guys, if there's a close call, a controversial call at the end of the game with 2 seconds, do you want the officials to blow the whistle or not? Probably not. I mean, if all things are being equal. I go back to a game that GW, look, I understand GW's position, and I don't fault them for feeling that way.
Right. Losing a game that way sucks.
Yeah.
It does.
But I would go back to this. GW played Mullen in the state championship. I want to say it was 2000, 2001, somewhere right in there. And I remember being at that game, and a call was made on a rebound that put someone on the foul line for Mullen with no time left. In my mind, was it a foul? You know what? It might have been, but I thought that was a terrible call because you're taking a situation in which a player isn't actually actively trying to score. He's just trying to get the ball, and you're putting him on the line to win with no time left. So it was one of those things where by letter of the law, you might call that foul in the first quarter. Do you call it with half a second left or no time left on the clock to put somebody on the line when they're not even shooting in the first place? No. I know these are not necessarily apples to apples, but my point is nobody wants a game decided by a call, good or bad, for or against. It just as a general rule, you want players to decide games. And I know that George Washington players and coaches and fans are going to say, yeah, we did try to decide the game by drawing a charge. I understand that, but I generally think that it has to be so egregious, especially on a block charge, that it doesn't get called unless it is that obvious.
So, another thought I had is Terry Ward, longtime coach up at Niwot. Terry well. I was chatting with her about it, and she looked at me and said, the one way, and I've been saying this for years, one way you solve this problem is you put the charge circle under the basket in high school. Because
that's another point, which I've always believed that whether there is a circle there or not, that if you're under the basket and you get run over, tough luck. You shouldn't be standing under the basket. That's neither here nor there, but yeah, I mean, that's a good point she has.
And the last thing that I want to do is completely 100% unabashed defend the officials, because we all know it, we all see it. Officials get things wrong. It's human. I liked it. Our friend James Noakes, he and I were chatting may have been a week and a half ago after Tad Boyle's rant about instant replay. And James he sent me the clip with a text of old man yells at cloud. And I told him, I actually agree with him. I hate instant replay in sports. I don't think it solves all your problems. The games, and I agree with Tad, played by humans, officiated by humans. Let's just let the humans figure the whole thing out. But on Saturday, the first boys game of the day, Mesa Ridge and Silver Creek, there's a moment where Mesa Ridge is down by 3 points with just a few seconds left on the clock, and Silver Creek has possession. You're going for a jump ball immediately. And right here, I think they get it. I think they get a jump ball. The player is screaming timeout when it looks like there's dual possession, and he grants a timeout to Silver Creek. And that was one where I showed that clip to the officials evaluators, and they kind of gave me that look like, I don't know if I would sit there and say that was the right call. They didn't say that to me, but you could tell that they were kind of uncomfortable watching that one. And that was also at a crucial moment of the game. Possession arrow was in Mesa Ridge's favor. You win the jump ball, you have the ball down 3 with a chance to tie the game. So,
well, I'm glad you had that clip, because number one, I saw that one live, and I agree that should have been a jump ball well before a timeout. I think it looked to me like mutual possession had taken place long before any official ever acted as if he was reacting to a timeout call. The other part of that is, and if you look really closely way back there, I'm behind the play right there, but the play before that, the official called a foul on what looked to be a jump. I mean, exact same spot, exact same scenario. They called a foul on what really was a tied up ball. Mesa Ridge really got about – there was a play before that too that was a little controversial. They basically got 3, what I would consider controversial calls go against them in 3 consecutive possessions, all in the same spot. Mm-hmm. And Mesa Ridge coach, and I'm blanking on the name.
Joel Babbitt.
Yeah. He was beside himself, because he's saying, hey, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. My kid just made the play that he's supposed to make, and he's being punished 3 possessions in a row now. That was one. I completely agree with you. I think they got the short end of the stick. I think, Silver Creek put themselves in a risky position on all 3 possessions, and they got bailed out. And I know officials never like that term bailout, but that's really what happened on those 3. So, hey, look, it's basketball, and not every game is going to be decided by a call or 2. And if you really talk to anybody that's ever played sports, no game is ever decided by a call or 2. It's all the things that take place within the entire, start to finish game, whether you're playing football, basketball, baseball, it doesn't matter. I mean, games are won and lost on multiple plays, and that's one of them.
Right. And
those just happen to be under the microscope.
It's funny you mentioned Coach Babbitt, because I saw him later in the day. I think he sent the team home, or he went home with them and drove back. But he came up to watch some of the later games, and I saw him kind of in a break when I was going to get some food. And I said it was a bummer to see them gone, because I've known Joel now for years, and he and I get along. And Coach Banning at Silver Creek is great, and I think that Silver Creek team has a really good story behind it. So, but when I was talking to Joel, the first thing, he didn't complain to me about the calls. He didn't complain to me about any officiating or anything like that. He sat there and he looked at me and he said, we weren't good enough this year. Like we were really fortunate to get to the Coliseum, but you cannot shoot 44% from the field in a grade 8 game and expect to win. You cannot shoot 33% from the free throw line in the Denver Coliseum and expect to win a game. And when you win that game, when you lose that game by 7 points and you've missed 8 free throws, like that's going to sting far worse than any call. So I like that. And Joel is one of those guys, like he wants the kids to learn accountability and the ability to take ownership when life deals you a bad hand like that. It wasn't the officiating that lost Mesa Ridge that game. It was just the fact that they weren't good enough on that day offensively. They were as good as they needed to be against Palmer Ridge. They were probably, and Babbitt would probably be the first to say this, they were fortunate that Palmer Ridge scored that upset win over Cheyenne Mountain to knock the number 5 seed out, because if it's Cheyenne Mountain against Mesa Ridge, I don't know that Mesa Ridge gets to the Coliseum. Right. So a lot of things, you're right. There are a lot of things that are in play, and that was a piece of it. But at the end of the day, there were how many other possessions where something could have gone a little differently. George Washington was down by 10 at one point in that game, and they did a phenomenal job of battling back. And, Ralston Valley made a play at the end. Like that's ultimately what it is.
See a team lose on a made basket than, a call that puts somebody on the free throw line that's potentially could have gone either way.
Right. And you can, and for what it's worth, everyone I talked to, I talked to a coach who said he watched that play 20, 25 times after I posted it on Twitter. and he couldn't decide if it was the right call or not. And when you get to the point where I really don't know that what the call is, then probably the right answer is no call.
No call, let it go on, and the kid made a shot. I mean, you got to tip your hat to him.
Yeah, and some of the other officials basically told me, if you're going to put a whistle on it because the defender initiated contact first, it's a block. And
thank goodness we don't have instant replay in high school.
Thank goodness we do not have instant replay in high school. We do have instant replay on social media, though, and where maybe it comes in handy is on a day like Saturday when you had the Stanley Lake girls, Doug. What a fantastic game between them and Windsor. JoJo Martin with just a phenomenal play here at the end, courtesy of our friend Dennis Ployce. Just perfect steal. The freshman, who's already been offered by CU, from what I understand, gets it at the buzzer. She's going to be fun to watch for the next 3 years. Congratulations to Stanley Lake. They move on. I believe they play number 1 Lutheran in the Final Four on Thursday. So that's going to be a fun game to watch. We'll go down kind of the highlights a little bit from the weekend. Northfield ends Brianna Crittenden's run at a 6A title.
41 points, though. She took the heavy lifting, and it just wasn't quite enough. The game before, Northfield's bench and surrounding cast really stepped up. They didn't shoot as well, and I think some of that could be attributed to the Coliseum. It always kind of is on that first game there. She needed a little bit more help, but 41 points, what a way to go out.
And Northfield has a lot more depth than maybe I would have thought they had. And you've paid attention to this program more than I have this year, but I was really surprised to see the versatility that they have on the floor and the amount of players that can go out and just get a basket when we need to, or when they needed to. Denver East and Highlands Ranch, lower seeded teams. The Angels beat Valor Christian. Good call by you from our pick show last week.
You gotta like the story. You gotta bet on the story. Both stories, East and Highlands Ranch, got great stories behind them.
Yeah, and what's funny to me about Highlands Ranch is I think their seed definitely gave a misconception of what this team is about, because this team is good. Yeah. This is a very, very good basketball team. And Arapahoe handed Cherokee Trail a loss earlier in the year, right? The Cougars are into the Final Four, and then Highlands Ranch, I believe they're going to get it's Highlands Ranch and Denver East, a rematch from earlier in the year, and I think one of Highlands Ranch, they only have 1 or 2 in-state losses. One of them was to Denver East, so that's going to be a fun Final Four game. 6A boys outside of Ralston Valley, George Washington really wasn't anything to write home about. You had some good performances. We're going to talk about Aiden Perez later for Rangeview, but the first half of that Rangeview Cherry Creek game was choppy.
Well, that's an interesting one you bring up, because in my mind, going into all of this, I've been saying for a long time, I think Rangeview is the team to beat. In that first half, they could have been beat by anyone in this tournament.
Except for Cherry Creek.
Well, in the first
half of that game,
and that's again, both teams play on the same floor, and none of these teams play at the Coliseum, consistently throughout the year ever. So it is kind of one of those things where I think you give a team a little bit of a pass early in a game because of the shooting. But I will say, for both Cherry Creek and Rangeview, there were so many turnovers in that game. It was the most difficult to watch first half of basketball, especially for two really good teams that I've seen in quite some time. They come out in the second half, and it was a totally different story. Rangeview looked like the team that we all kind of thought they were. So I think that's a very interesting situation to see how they come out in their semifinal game, because they had to have learned a lesson there about what you can't do and what you're not going to get away with here in the next round.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Aiden Perez a little bit later, man. But if you want to talk about a gamer, that guy's going to go to the top of my list after what we saw going on at the
this in the second half,
and in more ways than one, as we'll get to later. But The 2 top seeds in the 5A boys bracket have been eliminated. That includes Peach City. Palisade loses to Lewis Palmer, and Lutheran gets the better of Grand Junction. Shout out to Western Slope hater Matt Langley of Basketball Colorado. We're going to add a little bit to his title. He's also the executive producer of the Coliseum Jams playlist. I know he's going to be happy to hear me give him acknowledgement of that. Lewis Palmer now the top remaining seed in the 5A tournament at number 8. I mean, tough look for whatever for the selection seeding index if we're going through how these teams are being seeded.
Yeah,
no system is perfect.
No system's perfect, but I think this is where, the eye test versus stats on paper are very different because, Lewis Palmer, when you watch them, you're like, how is that team at number 8? I mean, these guys could play. And, it's there, like you said, there's no perfect system, but I think when you get lower in class, there are fewer comparables that can be made across schedules. There's a lot of travel involved. There's a lot of playing up a class or down a class, depending on what part of the state you're in. So I think that the index is a lot harder it's harder for the index to be accurate the lower the class, in my opinion. I think at the big school level, you have strengths of schedules, you have teams that are playing against comparable teams just within their league all the time. I think the lower the class, the bigger the disparity is between the haves and have-nots. And it's hard. It's hard when you're just looking at numbers only.
Yeah, and we're moving to just they're going to use solely Max Preps rankings next year. And so to look at it, I mean, it's a little bit better. Lewis Palmer's a 7, not an 8. Windsor is a big one, right? Windsor is the number 11 seed in the 5A boys bracket. They're number 8 in the Max Preps index. You had Pueblo South, who's a number 11. They lost to Lewis Palmer in the Sweet 16. So that's probably a little more representative of where a team like that could be. I know that was an 8-9 matchup on the bracket, but I thought Lewis Palmer was, especially in the second half, a little bit better. That Lewis Palmer team, Doug, I think it was their road win at Cheyenne Mountain. I was able to get there and catch the second half of that game. I remember walking out of that gym thinking, oh, Lewis Palmer looks like the Lewis Palmer teams that was winning state titles. Jonas Miller looks really good. Devin Vandermeer he's such a talented player. And I think this is a squad that, that's one we got to keep our eye on for next weekend. I think if it's them and Lutheran, that would just be funny because now you're getting like your PPAC and state championship, your PPAC championship and your state championship all rolled into one little cozy game at the Denver Coliseum. The 5A girls side, Kinley Asp, we've talked about how dangerous she was. She was fantastic. I think she put up 36 points, but it was Lutheran or Montrose coming away with that win. The Red Hawks are into the Final Four.
Montrose could shoot. I mean, Kinley Asp, you're right. She was a one-man band out there and almost pulled it off. But I mean, Montrose just had perimeter play that was on another level. I mean, they all hit open shots, and that was the difference in that game is how well they shot the ball from the outside.
Well, and it was really a testament to like how different those teams were, right? Where Air Academy relied almost solely on Kinley. She scored 36, and the Cadettes as a whole scored 54, right? So you had 18 points outside of what Kinley was able to do. Montrose gets the win with 61 points, and Macy Oberg led with 20, right? So you had, and they had 2 other players in double figures in Landry Johnson and Maggie Legg.
Shot very well.
Yeah, you had very much a team attack. So it's going to be a real interesting matchup when we get to Green Mountain and Montrose on Thursday. Of course, the Rams, shout out Jeff Owens, our VP of Sales and Marketing. Jeff's Rams are into the Final Four after a key win over Meade, and they're down a leading scorer, Dougie, and they had some girls step up. So it's going to be that's going to be another fun semifinal showdown. Lutheran girls, I saw Pueblo East dad, Paul Andrada, he's, guy I've known for a long time. His daughter plays for the Eagles, and I asked how that game was going to go during warmups, and he thought if Pueblo East could get out and run, that they would be able to hang and maybe score the upset over Lutheran, and that did not happen. Berkeley Schneider was just fantastic for the Lions, and then in the boys, the nightcap, they beat Grand Junction. Kate Speckman is just going to be, really, really tough to deal with. Lewis Palmer's gotten a win over the Lions, but that's not going to be an easy win. Lutheran's going to be a tough out the rest of the way. We do have medium to small school brackets that got their grade 8 set. We're going to dive into that a little bit after the break, and then we're going to talk some state championship venues, what we like, what we don't like, and those who listen to the show or watch the show might have an idea of where I'm going, but it'll be fun. This is the Colorado Prep Show presented by Upswing.
Golf season is here, and Denver Golf Passes make it easier than ever to play. Start your golf journey with Learn and Play 1.0. 5 clinics, 5 rounds, 5 buckets. Already playing? Take your game up a level with Learn and Play 2.0. Or grab the Friends and Family Pass. 20 par 3 rounds and 30 mini golf or range sessions. And for new players wanting reps, the Practice and Play Pass gives you 10 rounds and 15 range buckets. Find the pass that fits your game. Visit cityofdenvergolf.com.
The Benefits Broker team of agents has over 100 years in employee benefits and individual health care needs and is your 24/7 resource for a variety of essential benefits-related information. Clients have enjoyed the ability to connect in person. The Benefits Broker team of agents has over 100 years in employee benefits and individual health care needs and is your 24/7 resource for a variety of essential benefits-related information. Clients have enjoyed the ability to connect in person or by phone, while others enjoy the convenience of their online service where they can review the status of their claims, obtain summaries, and download forms including claim forms. Dave and Steve do their homework so you don't have to. They know the market by distinguishing the best products from the merely adequate. Give them a call at 877-545-4840 or visit them online at benefitsbroker.com.
There are those who say the modern world has made us lose touch with places like this. We say, that depends on what you're driving.
Welcome back into the Colorado Prep Show presented by Upswing. Dan Mohrmann, Doug Ottewill. State basketball championships will be decided this weekend, and we'll be up in the Denver Coliseum for a lot of it. Doug, I'm going to try and sneak down to Hamilton Gym to watch a little bit of 3A at some point. But and speaking of which, the grade 8s are set for 4A, 3A, 2A, and 1A. All those brackets are available at coloradopreps.com. We're not going to run down the entire fields for both boys and girls, but what I do want to know is what surprises did we have? Because you're going to see a little bit more, I would say, I don't want to say less parity, but upsets are less surprising, I feel like, at that level, just because you genuinely get a good representation of where teams are. That being said, we did have upsets. We had some very significant upsets. So when looking at some of the surprise teams, Doug, and I'm going to go first, I was genuinely stunned to see the Peak to Peak boys get through Holy Family. I think that was one that I thought the Tigers were going to be a shoo-in for the Coliseum just because they've played so well all year and they play in a really tough league. But Tyson Burton, just a phenomenal player for Peak to Peak, was able to put him, I would believe he put his team on his back and just got the job done and got the Pumas to the Coliseum. We go down to 3A, and the St. Mary's boys, a team that I know fairly well just from Tri-Peaks action. They got to stay close to home, but I saw both them and Peyton play this year, and I thought Peyton was the better team, and St. Mary's just rolled in there and scored the big win, and they'll be up at the Coliseum. They actually get a league game in the grade 8, and they'll play Colorado Springs Christian. It'll be the third matchup between the teams. They split the first two, so now we've got the rubber match between CSCS and St. Mary's. And then the Flagler girls, they gotten beat by Evangel Christian earlier in the year. and they went and got some payback, and that payback earns them a trip to Greeley, Bank of Colorado Arena, where they're in the mix. They're in the grade 8, and they have a chance to continue their season and win a state championship. So those were the surprises I saw throughout the brackets. Doug, where were you a little stunned to see some teams advance?
Well, it's funny because as much as the Lyman Badgers were on our radar all during football season, and rightfully so, as they came away with the 1A state championship, they were really pretty quiet, pin drop kind of quiet all throughout the basketball season. Yes, a decent team, but not to the level that we've come to expect from Lyman teams, whether you're talking football or basketball. But they get the win this weekend, and they beat Marino pretty handily to get themselves, advancing and kind of unforeseen. Keegan Malott, he's leading the Badgers with 11 points per game. For everybody that remembers him from football season, I mean, that's a big kid, and I think he's kind of getting that lower block down and getting points when the Badgers need him. I will say this, Dirk Peterson has them playing their best basketball at the right time. And, not to make an excuse for a team, but when you win the state title in football, you probably miss about the first 2 or 3 weeks of practice in basketball. So it's kind of understandable that perhaps Lyman is coming into its own right about now, which is never good for the rest of the field. They come in as a number 9, just beat a number 8. So I'm really anxious to see what they can do here in this next game. The other one that kind of jumped out to me is sticking out east. Akron, beat Twin Peaks Classical Academy, which then went on to get beat by Plateau Valley.
Chaos in that region, just utter chaos
sequence, especially if you're looking at seeds. So, I have Plateau Valley coming in and, taking care of business against what looks like a lower seed, but they pulled off the biggest upset in the tournament so far in terms of Akron beating Twin Peaks. So Plateau Valley moves on, and that just you're right. It is just chaos in that part of the bracket. So those were fun games to watch, and as you pointed out early on, you're gonna get some upsets. You just don't know where they're going to be, and that bracket was particularly full of them.
Yeah. As you look at those smaller school brackets, are there any grade 8 matchups going in, or do you see a potential Final Four state championship game that really, really jumps out and intrigues you?
Yeah, I mean, I like Sanford versus Simla in the potential 2A title game. I mean, I think that those two winding up there would be a great matchup, great to watch. We talked about on this show whether we thought Sanford was a true number 1. I feel like Simla is probably the team to beat in that class. So I would love to see those two wind up and square off and see how that goes. To me, that's the one that I'd be keeping an eye on is Sanford versus Simla.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that, because when the football playoffs started, I think one thing that you, me, and Jermaine more or less kept preaching when looking at the 1A bracket was, we know what the best matchup on this, we know what the best state championship matchup would be. It was going to be Buena Vista versus Lyman, and that's what we all, wanted to see. It was the matchup that we wanted to see. And I think as we looked at that seeding index kind of play out through the course of the year, we kind of said the same thing. Like, yeah, Sanford, they had some decent wins, and they had some wins over, a 4A team in La Junta. So by no means is Sanford a school that anyone should overlook. But when you think about the fact that, Simla won the state title last year, they've been playing well all season. They have carryover from that championship roster. That's one that definitely is like on the list of what we would want to see. For me, I'm actually looking at the 4A boys Final Four. I'm really, really curious to see how a potential Aspen Montezuma Cortez game would play out, because one, it would make Western Slope hater Matt Langley of Basketball Colorado lose his mind to see a full Western Slope matchup in the Coliseum. But Aspen has wins over Peak to Peak and Lamar, 2 other grade A teams, right? So there's no doubt that that's a team that belongs there. Cortez is undefeated. Cortez remains undefeated. They beat Grand Junction earlier in the year, right?
That's a pretty big step up.
Right. So, but since that Grand Junction game, it's been a lot of blowouts. So as you get deeper and deeper into the playoffs, the games, in theory, should be more and more competitive. So if Aspen has, if Aspen can provide the test that that Cortez hasn't seen in a while, or hasn't seen in a while, they did need a buzzer beater win over TCA. I will say that. But in terms of overall skill and ability, I think Aspen is a better team than what the Titans were. So, and you're not at home. You're in a neutral venue. You're in a venue that you mentioned it earlier in the year. The first time you get in there, it can cause a little bit of havoc on your shooting percentages and your overall field, just because of the depth perception of the Coliseum. But anything else as you've been kind of poking your way through the brackets, Doug? I mean, I would like to see the CSCS girls. That's a group that's just played together for so many years, 2 years removed from their last state title. I think that's a team that could make a run. I want to say the Merino girls are in a position to make another run at a state title. They get Akron in the grade 8 up at Moby Arena at Fort Collins. But anything else jump out at you?
Well, I think, I'll drop down a classification and look at both McClave boys and girls. They won them last year. They're number 1 seed again this year. So you could have a potential back-to-back repeat for both boys and girls. I think that's a story worth watching. And, up till now, there's no reason to think that either team can't do that. I mean, they've rolled through their brackets, winning by, I want to say 20 points is their, smallest margin of victory for either boys or girls. So, yeah, let's keep an eye on McClave and see if they can pull up that, double team parade there for the school.
And the entire town of McClave is going to be jammed inside a Bank of Colorado arena, which is going to make for a fun atmosphere for those teams. Speaking of which, it's something that I always enjoy talking about as we get into state championship stuff. And there aren't many sports where we get to see the variety of venues where the sport is played in. So we're going to take one final break, and when we get back, we're going to evaluate and rank and give our rankings for how the state championship venues match up for the classifications of the teams that are playing in them. So one final segment left. This is the Colorado Prep Show presented by UPSWING.
There are those who say the modern world has made us lose touch with places like this. We say, that depends on what you're driving.
This is Tim Anderson of Gordon Insurance, and we are proud to support all of our area athletes. With offices in Lyman, Callahan, Flagler, Sterling, and Kit Carson, we offer all types of insurance, including home, auto, commercial, farm, crop, life, bonds, and workman's compensation. We are independent and thus can offer you multiple choices of companies, not just one. Call or visit the office near you, and one of our agents can take care of you. See all of our contact information by going to www.gordonins.com or call me at 719-740-1361.
When I go to court, these aren't my clients, these are my friends. These are people that I believe in. And they have one shot, just one shot for justice. If they've come to me and we've gotten to trial, their life has been turned upside down in some awful way. I'm all they have. So if I haven't put the time in, if I haven't trained, if I haven't humbly looked in the mirror and thought about ways I can be better, and I don't present my best self in court, then I failed them. And that's what motivates me as a trial lawyer, because when this is over, that client goes home. And if I haven't done my best for him, I haven't been his champion, then I've failed.
Golf season is here, and Denver Golf Passes make it easier than ever to play. Start your golf journey with Learn and Play 1.0. 5 clinics, 5 rounds, 5 buckets. Already playing? Take your game up a level with Learn and Play 2.0. Or grab the Friends and Family Pass. 20 par 3 rounds and 30 mini golf or range sessions. And for new players wanting reps, the Practice and Play Pass gives you 10 rounds and 15 range buckets. Find the pass that fits your game. Visit cityofdenvergolf.com.
Welcome back into the Colorado Prep Show presented by Upswing. Dan Mohrmann, Doug Ottewill. Wrapping up, I guess it would be technically a state basketball preview. I don't know how much we've previewed what's left of the brackets, but the one thing I do want to talk about, the venues where the games are being played. They've rotated obviously through the course of the years. Everyone's kind of changed homes every once in a while, but Doug, I really like talking about venues that host championships. I think my favorite sport when we talk about specific venues would be golf because they rotate every year.
Oh, yeah. I think great courses around the state.
Yeah, and this year you got a really good look of what a tournament experience can be like for those kids up at Eagle Ranch. And to me, that's a big part of this battle is, how does the championship experience translate to these kids? So the venues we have, and I'll tell you how I want to rank. I want to have you rank these here in just a second. But 6A, 5A, and 4A are all at the Denver Coliseum. 3A is at Hamilton Gym, which is on the campus of University of Denver. It's where the DU men's and women's basketball team plays. 2A is at Moby Arena, a shift from Blue Arena in Loveland up to Moby in Fort Collins, the site of the CSU Rams. And then 1A is Bank of Colorado Arena at the University of Northern Colorado, home of the UNC Bears. So we're going to rank these 6 through 1, right? Obviously with 1 being our premier. And there are 4 venues, but we're doing 6 rankings because 6A Coliseum is not the same thing as 4A Coliseum. So that's how I want you to think about it is the Coliseum as a championship venue for 4A teams. Like, where does that fall into your ranking of championship venues? Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, I got you. Where you want to start here?
We're going number 6, and you're going to lead us off.
Number 6 in my mind. So this is my least favorite.
Your least favorite venue?
Yeah, I'm going to go with 3A, Hamilton Gym at DU. In my mind, and this maybe has more to do with DU basketball than any high school. Hamilton Gym is just short of a high school gym. I don't know what the premium is for rent there, or if there is one, but you could just as easily play at a high school gym in my mind. Hamilton is and if you follow DU basketball, they used to play in Magnus. They'd play where the hockey rink is, and that's a very great venue. It's really cool. Just a cool space. It has a feel of a big time program. It has it's a really nice facility, but I believe, and I don't want to be misinformed here, but my assumption is because they didn't pack it with DU basketball, they eventually moved into a cheaper to run venue in Hamilton. Has nothing to do with high school kids, but in my mind, if you're playing in a state championship, you want to be playing in a venue that is perceived to be vastly bigger and better than where you play on any given Tuesday or Friday night. So Hamilton Gym is my number 6.
Okay. What's really interesting about that. And I kind of had this idea that the second you talked about how the team used to play in Magnus, imagine taking the new CHSAA branded floor at the Denver Coliseum, which looks fantastic, by the way. That little change, and I don't know if that was necessarily so little for CHSAA, but they've rebranded their logo and everything. But that floor in the Coliseum now actually added a lot more value than I maybe would have thought it would before. So I just wanted to throw that.
I want to know where the old parquet one went.
I don't know.
Who has it?
I don't know. That it was from the old McNichols, right? Or is that the theory?
Yeah.
Or is that the fact?
It is where it's from. Yeah. Okay. I played on it in 1990.
Yeah. So we're due for an upgrade.
Yeah. And they did. And it's a beautiful court. So
yeah, it looks great. Looks fantastic. But if you took that floor and you put it at Magnus, that would be a great venue for the top level for 6A, 5A, 4A in my mind. So anyway, My number 6 is 4A at the Denver Coliseum. I think the place is nearly empty. A lot of those schools are coming from further locations, and that's always going to be the case when you're playing in a state championship game, right? But it's the same complaint that I would have when football was being played at Mile High. And while aesthetically Mile High is a much better overall venue than I think the Coliseum is, I think, the highest level that you can be, right? You're on the Broncos playing field. You don't get that same value with the Coliseum, and it looks empty. And I just think that 4A in the Coliseum is the completely wrong place for that classifications championship to be played in. So I'm going to go with number 5. We'll snake it. So I'm going number 5, and it's actually between. I'm gonna not hate on DU as much. I'm actually gonna go 5A at the Coliseum as my number 5 for a little bit of that same reason. I think it's not gonna be as packed. I mean, Lewis Palmer does a great job of bringing students, and there's barely a dent when you look at the space they have compared to the amount of kids that are brought in. And that's I don't know what the perfect solution. Well, the ideal solution would be somewhere like CU, because if you're going to do it at a venue that's going to be empty, I mean, maybe a little bit more ambiance for the kids. I thought it was fantastic when the old 5A and 4A championship games were up in Boulder. But 5A at the Coliseum would be my number 5.
Yeah, I think I'm going to apply the same logic to my number 5 with what you just said about 4A. I kind of feel like that is kind of the outlier for 4A. And the other part, and this is more of a philosophical thing, won't necessarily apply to the rankings, but kind of factors into how I look at it. I'd like to see 2 classes at each venue, because you're kind of guaranteed a steady flow of crowd. You're kind of guaranteed that there's going to be some carryover crowd from one game to the next that kind of has a rooting interest. So, when these teams leave, because they've just won or just lost, there's always that next team that's coming in. And if the game that follows has something to do with your bracket, those people are probably interested and are watching intently, to that game. So I like the idea of having 2 classes at each venue. So we'd essentially bump this list down by 3 venues, which again, I get isn't part of this exercise, but in theory, that's why I think 4A doesn't work as well at the Coliseum, especially on their own day. And then they move into obviously the semifinals on over the weekend, just like everybody else. But so my we're at 4, right?
Number 4.
Number 4. Boy, that's a tough one. I'm gonna go with Moby Arena at CSU, a gym that I really like. But again, it's kind of odd to have 2A teams in a really, really big venue. I think the 2A teams would be better suited to be playing at Bank of Colorado Arena, along with the 1A schools. I like Moby Arena a lot. Love it for a college basketball game. I don't think it quite fits for 2A basketball.
Okay. Number 4 for me, I'll go Hamilton at DU. And I say it because I actually think that for the classifications that are there, I think it fits. I think it's the appropriate size. I think it's a good feel, right? You're still playing on a college level floor. There's still you're on a college campus. I agree with what you say about 2 classifications maybe at the same venue. If you took 4A out of the Coliseum and you put it in Hamilton, I think it works. I think maybe
I'd even take 4A and 3A and put them at Moby, because to me that's that elevated experience, which I think every kid deserves when they're in the state tournament. But it's a little bit bigger. It's a little bit more, traditional college venue. So if you had 2 classifications in Moby, I think it would work a lot better than just having 2A.
No, I wouldn't disagree with that at all. And I think what they had done in years past was 1A and 2A would play their grade 8 and final 4 games at Bank of Colorado and then Blue Arena in Loveland. And then all the championship games were at Blue Arena. And I actually think even if you did something like that, for those lower classifications, I think that's a good solution. We're down to 3, correct?
Mm-hmm.
3 for me is going to be Bank of Colorado Arena. And for the 1A games, I've been to a couple of 1A games up there, as have you. And I like it. I think it's perfect. It's college campus. These kids do not get that experience. And even if it feels empty, I think that's kind of overruled by, that's probably the nicest floor that they've played on that year.
Yeah. And that's, I think, is it my turn to go number 3? Or is it your turn? Yeah,
it's your turn.
My turn for my number 3 is also Bank of Colorado Arena. I actually really like it, and I don't want a number 3 ranking to be seen as anything but positive. For whatever reason, and maybe this isn't the best way to evaluate, but it feels loud to me. It doesn't really matter if it's fully packed or not quite packed. It just feels like a loud, exciting environment. I like it. You're right. It's a great floor. It's a fun venue. Obviously it's not as big and bright as Moby or the Coliseum or even Hamilton. But I prefer Bank of Colorado over Hamilton by quite a bit, even though they're kind of similar in terms of how they're laid out, I guess.
Yeah. We're in agreement on one of them. And I think that's where we end, where our agreement on one of them is going to end. So I believe it's your turn to go number 2.
I'm going to go with 5A Coliseum. I think that, I love the Coliseum, whether it's 5A or 6A. So, I mean, my number 1's already been revealed just by, process of elimination. But 5A and 6A basketball, your biggest and theoretically best classification, best quality of basketball, in my mind, should be at sort of the best venue. And I think the Coliseum among this list is the best venue. I think the tradition there is great. I think the seating is it's a big venue, but it feels like people are right there. I love the Coliseum, and maybe that's more of a nostalgic pick than it is anything else, because you and I both agree the facilities, outside of the basketball court itself are nothing to rave about. I mean, they're old, locker rooms are small, concrete everywhere. It's definitely not fancy per se, but I love the history of the Coliseum. So I never mind watching there. I also would give a shout out to the concession stands at the Coliseum. Not only are they good, but probably among the more reasonably priced among venues in Colorado. So I got no issues with the Coliseum. That's my 1 and 2, 6A and 5A at the Coliseum.
You were a big smoothie guy last weekend.
Smoothies over there.
Yeah, and I imagine you'll hit that once or twice from Wednesday to Saturday. So, I mean, I'm going 6A at the Coliseum as my number 2, just because the 6A championship games are always fantastic. A lot of times the games and the atmosphere for me will override the actual venue. Not available on this list, right? Because we're just ranking things that are on the list. But I've seen the top level basketball games be played at the CU Event Center in Boulder, and there's no contest. Like, it's not even close as to which venue is better for that environment. And if we're going to go deeper, like, better for the kids. Like, I don't necessarily think the kids like playing in the Denver Coliseum. It doesn't, like, you'll see Nebraska plays their high school state basketball championships in Lincoln on the Cornhuskers floor. And you see all these other top tier venues. The Coliseum, man, it's a building that, it feels very much like a leftover. I would like to see, go ahead.
This is where kind of I could, maybe you might have to pull me off of my soapbox, but I think you raise a good point about Nebraska and the fact that their top venue in the state, obviously University of Nebraska, is where things are settled when it comes to high school basketball. I think we have a duty, and I say we, meaning Kroenke Sports and Entertainment, has a duty to make it a priority to get kids in their venue. You know, Ball Arena is hands down the best basketball venue in the state. I mean, yes, CU is awesome. It's a super intimate venue. You know, the seats kind of collapse onto the floor. It's loud. I could say the same thing about Moby. And if you look at CU and CSU, you know, those are the premier programs in the state. So they're, in my mind, at least CSU is doing their part, saying, hey, come up here. We want you to play in our home, the biggest and the best home that Colorado has to offer. Now, obviously, the Nuggets, in my mind, it still represents a bigger and best opportunity, bigger, best, and better, I should say. And I think that there was a time when high school state championships were settled at McNichols, at Pepsi Center when it was Pepsi Center. And I believe in 2001, KSE decided to host the Mountain West basketball tournament, which, you know, not a bad tournament, but after getting very low attendance and very little interest, they aborted that, and it went away, and they never brought the high school kids back. But basically, the high school kids got bumped for the Mountain West. I'm sure they were willing to pay a little bit more for the venue, and they've never been back since. In my mind, what better move can your professional team do? And we've seen it done with the Broncos. The Broncos have always been very integral in high school athletics. They hosted the state football championships for years and years and years. You know, I think you see it with the Rapids. Even they've hosted state soccer. I don't know why you can't figure out how to get state basketball done at Ball Arena. I do understand that there's two pretty major attendants there, 3 when you count the Mammoth. So yeah, I know that there's some scheduling conflicts, but I think you need to make that a priority to make the best basketball in the state take place on your floor at Ball Arena.
And I would go a little bit further. Maybe one of the hangups they have is that they already surrender that facility for 3 days for state wrestling, which is a fantastic event in itself. But I pretty much agree with all that. Like, I think if you're a professional team or you're high level college athletics, right? I actually think CU. I want to say the problem with the venue and why it ended up leaving and coming to the Coliseum was the asking price was just too high. And when you're thinking about what your audience is, what you're capable of, and you know, everyone can knock, you know, people love to knock CHSAA, but they're still a 501c3 nonprofit, and they're financially, I don't want to say constrained, but they have to be financially responsible when figuring these things out. So the cost of CU Boulder at the time for what Boulder was asking just got to be to where it didn't make sense. And I can understand that. I don't like it, but I understand it. I would like to see maybe now that, you know, athletic leadership is changing, maybe you have a new AD who's open to the idea of bringing how many high school kids up to his campus. And if 1 or 2 of them even say, oh, I really enjoyed this experience and being up at CU, you know, if they come up as a freshman and all of a sudden there's this, you know, very fond memory of going up there and watching your high school team win a state title. So I want to come to Boulder because there's a fondness for it. If you can get 1 or 2 kids to say yes, I feel like you've made your investment back that way. So I would like to see that conversation start. And again, like, I don't know what prompted the change from Blue Arena to Moby. And now as we've gone through it, I'm identifying Moby as my number 1. Small attendance aside, and I know I say the same thing for 4A, so I might be speaking out of both sides of my mouth a little bit. But what trumps the small attendance for me is the fact that you are playing basketball in a Division I facility. And Moby's great. Moby is fantastic.
Really cool venue.
And I think in terms of the championship experience that all kids are going to have this weekend, Moby is the best one for the kids, which is kind of where that all goes for me. So that was my soapbox. I think I organized this entire exercise just so I have to say something nice about CSU, just so I can point that out to all my Rams friends.
Well, hey, look, I think you make a great point, and it should be made for not only the Nuggets but for CU and for CSU, and you've seen these schools and venues kind of take this approach, but this shouldn't be looked at as look, everybody's running a business. Nobody wants to lose money, so don't expect anybody to do that. On the flip side, I think hosting these tournaments is a long-term investment. It's telling your fan base or your potential future student base or your potential season ticket holder base, this is a cool place to come. And you come here at a lower price point for a high school basketball game and you experience what this place has to offer, maybe that person buys a ticket or goes to school or who knows, host their own event there one day if they pick the right person. It just, to me, it's a long-term play. It's an investment in your community, not so much a how do the dollars and cents work out on any given one Saturday.
Yeah. And I've always thought what would be great is if we could somehow whittle down the state championships to your championship games, maybe at other venues. Maybe you're playing the semifinals all at the Coliseum on a Friday, and then you go over to Ball Arena on Saturday, and the entire day, 1A through 6A, or if you have to span 2 days, whatever, but play all of those championship games at Ball Arena. Like that would be the perfect world scenario for me. But I like this. I like this exercise, Doug. We may do this for state baseball championships, maybe girls golf in the spring, because I think everything else is stationary. Soccer comes down to Widener Field switchbacks down here in Colorado Springs. Track's always going to be at Jeffco. I want to say lacrosse has been over at DU, which is a fantastic facility for state lacrosse championships. But
yes, it is.
I really enjoyed this one. So, but back to where we're going this weekend, Doug. It is championship weekend. If we're looking at the Coliseum, I was able to identify 6 teams who will be playing between 5A and 6A that are still looking for their first state championships in program history. 6A boys, you've got Rock Canyon. It's the only one without a title. 6A girls, Cherokee Trail and Northfield. 5A boys, Silver Creek. Tough task when you're facing Lewis Palmer, who's been playing its best basketball of the year. 5A girls, Stanley Lake and Green Mountain, Team Jeffco. So we want our boy Dennis to be working plenty hard if we're going to get a state championship out of those Jeffco teams. But whether it's one of those teams, whether it's anyone else in the field, is there one team that you're really, really interested in seeing make a run at a state championship this weekend?
Well, it's near and dear to my heart because my nephews and niece go there, but Northfield girls basketball. I mean, I would love to see that team get over the hump and get a title. They've been pushing on it. They're knocking on that door for a couple years now. And I think they're right there. They're scrappy. They do all the little things. They're young too. You got a junior trio of London Taylor, Delaney Dennis, Madison Bethel. They look like they're ready for this moment. Like this stage is not too big for them. To get it done against Brianna Crittenden was pretty impressive. I mean, Riverdale Ridge just beat Broomfield. So this wasn't exactly a matter of seeding. It was, hey, this team just beat a number 1. We got to go in and take care of business. And Northfield did that. So I think it's always exciting for a school that's kind of searching for their first to go get it. And so I'm really behind the Northfield girls basketball team.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at the Rock Canyon boys. I like the idea. I like the idea of a team getting its first title. I mean, Cooper Elwood, a kid that you've highlighted, he's the engine that really runs that team. And he had a good performance the other night. Davis May had to step up because Jacob David got in early foul trouble. I don't think David scored his first field goal of the game until there were maybe like 3 minutes left in the third because he was on the bench for so much of the first half. But, there's depth on that team. They've played hard. They're, close loss to Chaparral early in the year. So they've got to see if they can fix that and come away with a win to push their way into the state championship game. And I really like Coach Kent Grams. He's kind of in that tier that I've talked about where I thought Jarris Crapshaw was last year. Really, really good coaches who haven't won a title, who, when they get one, maybe that kind of gets the weight lifted off their shoulders and frees them up a little bit. And maybe that can be someone who wins, 3 or 4 before they're done coaching. And he's been a good dude and he's always won. Good guy and he's easy to root for, especially this stage of the game. So we've taken up enough of everyone's time. But we've got to shout out our letter winners from the weekend. We saw so many good ones. I'm going to go with JoJo Martin from Stanley Lake girls basketball. She scored 33 points, including the game winner at the buzzer that we showed earlier. It was just a fantastic ending. It was, I think that was the third game of the day, Doug, and there was no shortage of action on Saturday after it took us, quite a while to get there on Friday. But who do you like for a letter winner?
Well, we talked about it earlier in the show. Aiden Perez from Rangeview. It was funny. You watch that first half and you think, man, how is this one of the best teams in the state? But you saw the second half, and specifically Aiden Perez hitting every bucket he could get his hands on. He's 70% from the field, including 4 for 5 from 3-point range. And it just felt like he took over that second half. And on a side note, he was shooting 1,000 when he had to throw up in the trash can. I mean, that's the kind of effort this kid put forth. He was so exhausted by the end of the game, and he had carried the Raiders that entire second half. He was so exhausted that he went and had to unload a little bit in the trash can off to the side. And hey, good for him. He's leaving it all out there, quite literally.
Yeah, he was battling a little bit of an illness, and you'd see him during a timeout run over to where the athletic trainer was standing, and he's just got his head buried in that trash can. Battled through that illness to lead Rangeview in. So great effort from Aiden. And then I'm going to finish it off with Madden Smiley. Windsor is the defending state champion, and we have not talked about them enough. That's a little bit of our fault, but Madden scored 19 points, and Windsor took down their rival Severance on Saturday. There's a lot of dislike between those programs. I hope it's friendly sports dislike, but they were, everyone was pretty happy to see, or everyone on the Windsor side was emotionally charged to see that win over the Silver Knights. Now, before we go, Doug, it would be irresponsible of us to not let everyone know that Mile High Sports is double dipping watch party fun with the Avalanche and the Nuggets games on Saturday. Where's that happening? I mean, Saturday's a big championship game. It's at number 38, which for anyone who doesn't know, number 38 is just on the other side of the parking lot from the Denver Coliseum.
You could walk there.
I have walked there from the Coliseum. So at 2 p.m., the Avs take on the Winnipeg Jets, and then at 6:30, the Nuggets face the Lakers. We'll be at number 38 all day with great food, giveaways, and more presented by Fix It 24/7. It's one of our great sponsors for Mile High Sports watch parties. We love working with them and think they do great work. We'd also like to highlight the Fix It 24/7 Heroes program, which offers free maintenance memberships to veterans, active duty service members, law enforcement, and first responders. The program is built on a simple belief: those who protect and serve our communities deserve the same level of care and protection in their own homes. Fix It 24/7 is thrilled to serve more than 3,500 heroes across Colorado, and you can find more information about their HVAC services and sign up for one of their memberships at fixmyhome.com. Stay tuned for upcoming Nuggets watch parties too, and you could win fun giveaways from both MHS and the Fix It crew. Fix It 24/7, reminding you that when your house is in trouble, call the Green Bubble. Number 38, Nuggets and Avs watch parties on Saturday. Go in between state championship games, or if your game's early, go after. It's great. And that's going to do it for us. If you need me and Doug and I are not going to be hard to find this week. Starting Wednesday at about 8:45 p.m., we'll be right back on press row at the Denver Coliseum. We've got 3 or 4 full days of basketball. So
can't wait.
It's going to be a blast. So big thanks to Danny Bailey for doing all the magic you always do, man, making us look good. Aaron Howard from Palisade, got to throw you another shout out for the shirts. Thanks for keeping us in check over giving you guys a grief. But that's, of course, Western Slope hater Matt Langley of Basketball Colorado. And what's that?
He doesn't get a shirt.
No, Matt does not get a shirt. His shirt, no, he was never going to get a shirt. But the third one went to Danny Bailey because he earned it. Enjoy. Next time you guys chat. Next time we're here, we're chatting about who won championships, and then we're going to start talking about spring sports, because if anything that snowstorm on Friday taught us, spring sports season is here. So, for Doug Ottewill, Danny Bailey, I'm Dan Mohrmann. This is the Colorado Prep Show presented by UPSWING.